We have Darren Smith with us here today. Darren is with sellmyhousetosmith.com. So make sure you head over to his website. And I believe that's also your Facebook handle. But definitely check out. There's some resources there for people. And I know that you and your team put out some pretty entertaining videos out on your Facebook here and there.
We try and keep it fun, a little bit of mix of things that are helpful and useful information and other just fun stuff like me riding on my one wheel or something like that.
So we're going to jump into like quite a few topics here, but I kind of wanted to start with how you started into real estate investing, because I know you have a military background and a lot of the people that work with you also are veterans.
Yeah, great question, JD. So I was in the military back 1997 to 2003. And when I got out, I was working as a government contractor doing the computer field. And one of my coworkers who sat next to me was a small-time real estate investor. So he flipped a couple of houses, had a couple of little rentals, and that kind of just spawned it right there. I read a couple of books he recommended and shadowed him a little bit, and there, took it from there.
Sure. So what did you jump into first?
The first real estate investment I ever made was a live-in flip. So that was back in 2003, pretty much very soon after I got out of the military. Bought it from a bank sale from a real estate broker who was another coworker of mine. Lived in it for 2 years, and I did quite well, as everybody did back then, from 2007 to roughly 2003 to 2007, 8, because the market, not only would I have done well without it, but probably went up another 40, 50,000 on that first flip, just from crazy prices.
Sure. And then now you seem to go more and more for your rental properties anyway. You talk about light industrial. What do you mean by light industrial rentals?
I love the industrial space as a whole, but especially the light industrial. And really, I specify that because I'm not buying, if you think of industrial, like major, like factories, lots of people that are doing massive like chemicals or things like that. Really, it's a lot of warehouse space, a lot of light manufacturing. Maybe they're making furniture. I have one building where they used to make plastic parts for automobiles. But again, it's not this heavy, intensive things where there could be environmentals and other types of assets going on. And I love the light industrial sector. I'm able to scale up significantly in the price and the income of the property. With also, it's easier to manage. So at the same time, not only I'm making more money from them, but it's less work once you're into the property. Now, getting into them, it's a heck of a lot harder, and it's a very long process and kind of you have to almost learn a little bit of another language when you get into the commercial space. But once you have that down, not that I do, you can start picking up things and scale up from there.
Sure. Well, I probably could be a whole episode in itself talking about light industrial, because that's a topic we haven't really touched on yet. And it's always been pretty intriguing, especially when you mentioned it's not as property management heavy. I suppose when you get somebody in there who's making a business out of it, they have a longevity. They stick around a lot longer.
Definitely. The turnover is much less frequent. It can be at least 5. Some of my tenants have been in for 10, 15 years. Not that I've owned the building, but have been there that long. And then the property management on them is significantly easier as well. Once you get somebody in, you have a good property management in place. A lot of times they take care of all the small maintenance items themselves, and the other ones, the property manager will take care of it. I haven't been to some of my buildings in over a year and a half.
Sure. Well, let's go back to sellmyhousetosmith.com. One of the things that really stood out to me and that I think is a refreshing message that I got right off the bat was that you kind of have a team that lives by a mantra that I think is really interesting, and that I think everybody probably should take to heart. Every seller must benefit.
That's absolutely right. We love that. That was on the back of our business cards for a long time. And what that really means is that we will absolutely not buy a property if we're not putting them in a better place. We always have to make sure that we're looking out for them and their interests. And we have lost deals because of that, where we've made less money because we tell every seller, hey, why don't you list it with a realtor? Boy, if you just did these couple of things, put a little bit of money in, sell it, you could make more money. And one of two things happens. Either they go off and they do that thing we recommend because it is a better option, or they'll tell us why that's not a good option for them. Hey, yes, I know I can make more money by doing this way or waiting, but I really need to solve this problem, or I need to get to this place in this amount of time. And so I'm willing to give up a little bit of equity in order to make that happen. And why I love that whole process and why our team uses that culture is that in the long run, I think not only do we help more people and we have a better reputation, but as a byproduct, we make more money because sellers will feel that. If you're talking to them and they truly know you have their best interest at heart, that comes through. That comes through in the conversation, and there's a bit more of a trust that you can build at that level, so you are able to help them get to that better place. Because that's our job as home buyers, is to help these people. And if you can't earn their trust in this very sensitive time and this complicated decision, you're never going to be able to get them to their place. And they're going to stay in that house, which is not their best option, and you're doing them a disservice. So that's why we always say every seller must benefit.
You're probably spending quite a bit of time with these people too, then.
The process of purchasing the property and getting to closing, the timeline on that is so much dependent on the needs of the seller and then the property itself. We've closed properties in a matter of a couple of days when everything allows it, and that is what the seller wants. And that's from first phone call to by the end of the week, we're at the title company changing over, and they get their check in hand. We've had several properties. In fact, we just closed one last week where it was 5-6 months in the closing. And that wasn't because they didn't want to sell quickly. It was because it was in half of an inherited property, hadn't gone through probate yet. We've had other ones where, liens, tracking down the lien holders and all these things. And these are problems that the seller would have to deal with no matter what, whoever they're selling to. We just have a lot of experience, and more importantly, we have the connections with the attorneys and the title companies that know how to kind of handle all those little niche problems that can really delay things and mess things up. So the time that we spend with these sellers can be very significant depending on what the needs of the house are. If it's easy, we can get it done very quickly.
So, you were talking about building that trust. Then are there any, because a lot of the people that you're talking to, they're usually in a rough situation. And many times when you're having these conversations with them, it might be the first time that they've verbalized or vocalized what their problems are. Have you found any, I don't want to call them necessarily strategies, but ways in which to earn their trust in quickly?
The best way that I know how to earn someone's trust, and we follow our sales training method is with John Martinez. That's who we use. Mm-hmm. And it's really to make sure you're asking the right questions about their situation and to truly listen to them. You want to learn everything you can about them and their situation. And honestly, the house and the money, and like if you're thinking about, oh my gosh, I need to buy this house for X number of dollars, and you're walking in the door thinking that, you're off to a bad start. You need to go in with this open mind, this ability to listen to someone and truly find out what is their pain and how do I get them to a better place, and what's their picture perfect look like, and just ask those types of questions. It's pain and picture perfect. And then when they answer you, don't take that answer and be thinking of your next question or thinking of, oh, I know how to solve that problem. Because if they tell you the first time and you're already thinking, oh, I've dealt with that problem on another house, I know how to fix this, and you tell them how to fix it, you're solving the wrong problem. You're not truly listening to them. You need to ask them, I forget what they're called, but they're like sympathetic statements where you're just like, really, could you tell me a little bit more about that? Or, that's really interesting. That must be difficult. What are you really looking to get out of that? And if you say those kind of things enough times, people will truly start to open up to you. And now you can solve their real problem and get them into the best place possible.
Sure. Yeah. And if anybody is interested, John has been on our show. And the most recent one was it's been a while. I probably better reach out to John again, but episode 87, if you want to check that out. John is a wealth of knowledge when it comes to talking to sellers and
Yeah.
handling situations. Um, again, just to remind everybody, definitely head over and I'm going to push people to your YouTube channel. Is it to sell my house to Smith on YouTube as well?
That's correct. It's on YouTube, and I haven't been as active out there as I'd like to. We're a little bit more on Facebook, but I definitely have some good videos out there as well.
Sure. So you were talking about um, different ways that you handle your private lenders. Like how do you work with private lenders when it comes to your real estate investing?
That's a great question, and the reason I say that is I get a lot of people that they ask me like, "Boy, how do you get so many private lenders, or how do you have so many people that want to lend to you on your properties? Like, man, I'd love to get those rates. How do you get those rates?" And it's if you again, just like with a seller, if you're going in with your thought process is, "Boy, I'm trying to get this much money, or I'm trying to get this borrow money at this rate," you're doing it wrong. You need to go in with that open mind of talking to that person, finding out what their situation is, finding out what their hopes and dreams are for their finances. Find out, what are they doing with their money now that they like or don't like. From a risk perspective, from a growth perspective, from a timeline perspective, like how long, if they lend you money, do they want it back in 3 months, a year, when they retire? Are they looking to keep it out all the time and stay very active, where they want to like know what's going on in the project? Maybe they watched a bunch of HGTV and they'd love to shadow you and see the flip that their money is funding. Or maybe they don't want to, when they wire that money over, they don't want to talk to you ever again. They just want to see the financial statements once a year. And I have both. So that's the first thing you need to think of when you're trying to raise private capital, is think of it from the other person's perspective. And again, just like with a seller of a house, same thing with a lender. What problem are you solving? How are you helping them get their hopes and dreams? And then it's building trust in you. So how do you get that person to trust you with their money? Track records and references are obviously a great thing. If you don't have that, then what you need to emphasize is anything you've done in real estate at all. Just talk about, hey, I flipped a couple of houses. I used my parents' money and I paid them back, or whatever that may be. And then show them how you're going to secure their money. And that could be, if you're buying properties at a discount, hey, Mr. Lender, Mrs. Lender, I'm borrowing this money, but look how much equity we're going to have left in this house. And if something went wrong, you have a deed of trust secured to that property. There's this much left over that if something went wrong, and if I got hit by a bus, I always use the hit by a bus analogy. What happens to my money? You're still protected. When that house sells, you get paid off, and you get that money. I take it a step further as well, and I tell them how all the payments are made. So if I have somebody where it's a flip, that's kind of nice and easy. You can walk them through it, secure the deed of trust. I take them through how that works at the first closing, and then when we sell, how they wire in the payoff amounts, and then they get that money wired back if they want it. I have a lot of lenders who lend to me on long-term rentals, properties that I'm holding for a while. And I love that setup because they're getting money all the time. It's not this back and forth. It's way less work for everybody involved, but they're getting a constant rate of return, month after month, year after year, and they don't have to do anything. And those I set up as automated as possible. All of the payments are done automatically. It's all automatic transfers of the rent money coming in from the property, the payments going out to their bank account. It automatically goes in if they are somebody who wants to receive payments. And then they get those annual statements where I touch base with them, let them know what's going on. And even if I was to get hit by a bus, that would all automatically happen. And I have all of my systems on. I do little Loom videos, so it's like a screen capture video, and that allows me to walk through like logging into my bank account, how the payments were made, how it's all set up. And my wife knows where all of that is, so she's watched them all, she's seen it all, so she kind of has that idea. So she could even take care of that. Should I get hit by that proverbial bus and something happens. So let your investors know they're secured, they're taken care of from beginning to end, and that you've done this, and you got their back, and their money is safe.
Well, since you brought up your wife, like how involved is she in this endeavor?
She is a great counsel to me, but she is not involved in real estate in any way.
Sure. No, it's always interesting to talk about the spouse. And what did she think of it when you initially broached this subject?
She thought I was a bit crazy, not so much for wanting to do real estate, but just the way I went about it. I think, not think, I know I have a bit of a higher risk tolerance than she does. So I was in computers for about 17, 18 years at a pretty high level. And I overlapped a lot of that with doing real estate as well. And coming up on 5 years ago, I got downsized from my last computer job. I was a remote consultant, and I had been in real estate a couple of years, kind of back in it after a furlong from getting hurt pretty bad in the last crash, and I was making some money. I was doing okay. In fact, there was a few months there where I'd replaced my computer income, technically, and I thought I can do this. I don't really need to go get another job, and let's just say I haven't gone back. I haven't got another job, but it took not in a couple months to replace my salary and get to a better place, but it took me a couple of years to reach that point. So we're 5 years in now, and life is a lot better. But let's just say the way I handled that transition, you want to make sure you have your spouse on board a lot better. And I could have been better in communicating with her. And so anybody out there that's thinking of like quitting their job and saying, man, I'm going all into this, I would say get to a point where you've consistently done that for a year, where you've have that type of income, especially if you have rentals. That's the best way to do it, because if you're flipping, that's a little hit or miss, even if you replace your income. But if you have a rental income coming in, now you're at a point where you can safely do that. And then also just have that real conversation with your spouse, who may or may not be as involved as you, to make sure that they're fully on board.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. And you should learn from Darren's experience here. If you're thinking about this, it's that consistency that is a really big indicator. If you had to get into start it all over again, are there anything that you would have done differently?
There is. Besides being a better communicator with my spouse, with Lauren, what I would have done was I would have gone, I would have gotten more focused, to be honest. I started flipping, realized buying houses was the tough part in that market. And so that was when I transitioned a lot over to wholesaling. So even still, we do about probably 90-10 on the wholesaling side versus flipping. But what I would have done was I tried marketing to the city. I did every marketing channel, Facebook ads, postcards, banded signs, website. I spent money everywhere you could think of, and that's just a couple. And I went wide too. I was in 2 different markets. At that time, I was in Pueblo, Colorado, and Colorado Springs, Colorado. And, just I was all over the place. And then I hired really quickly. Within a year of getting started, I hired like 3 people, which was, good and bad. I learned a lot through that process, and they were good people, but I didn't have my stuff together enough to be able to guide them and run the company. And so if I was giving advice to somebody starting off, I would say, pick one, focus at least one thing. Either focus in a very small, maybe like a certain zip code. Maybe you have an area of a couple thousand houses, neighborhood that you want to master, and maybe take that a step further and narrow on one marketing channel. I'm going to get really good at direct mail. I'm going to get my data management down. We use REI Sift for our data management, and we love it. And, really just master my data. And then that one marketing source where I'm hitting the prime targets. Or maybe I'm only going to it's going to take a little longer, but I'm going to build my website up and do SEO and get leads that way, or Google ads, or whatever it is. And then once you're making money out of that narrow focus, then add one more thing in at a time. Add that next marketing channel, or maybe expand your territory a bit more, and go from there. So if I was getting started out to keep my costs down and become the best I can at one thing, that's what I would do.
Sure. Let's say you are in a situation where you're starting out for the first time. Wholesaling is it seems like that's where everybody targets when they first get into real estate investing. What is the most effective way that you've found to market to potential sellers?
That's a
pretty loaded question, isn't it?
Well, it's a question that every 6 months I would probably give you a different answer. That's what makes that tough. So we have found at any given time success in any one of those segments, but I would have to go back to stealing a little bit from my previous answer, where if you could really find those niche people that you want to target. So instead of sending thousands of postcards a month. Maybe your whole area is 5,000. So you don't want to mail 5,000. Well, some people just say, okay, I want to mail ones that have 60% equity or more, 40% equity or more. Well, you can do that, but that's still a really big number. Take it even further. The results you're going to get are people that truly have motivation. So dig into like PropStream, where you can find out if they have liens on their property. REI SIF tells you if it's a vacant property, absentee owned, and then take those and you can set the number, like whatever your budget is that you want to mail to, based on how many things you want to stack. So if you're like, hey, I can afford to send 300 letters per month, or maybe I'm going to handwrite them or whatever, then just stack a couple more things on. So you're getting the most niche and the most targeted you possibly can. That's where you're going to find the most motivation that you possibly can. And when your budget grows a little bit, maybe add in one more thing that you can do. Now, instead of maybe just doing liens and tax liens and federal liens, now you're adding in divorced properties or vacant or whatever the scenario might be. So that's where you're really going to find the best bang for your buck. And honestly, in our company, we have narrowed down to that in some way where we're not doing as wide. We're doing a little bit more targeted marketing for some of our more expensive forms of marketing.
Sure. Have you found any way to stand out? Like if you're doing direct mail, like you're in a market, Colorado Springs, I'm sure it's pretty competitive. Have you found a way to stand out from all the other postcards people are getting?
Also a tricky question to answer, because you can really stand out if you bold colors, neon pink and things like that. People are going to see you, and you may get your phone ringing off the hook if you say like third notice and something a little more flagrant. So you'll get calls and you get noticed, but that may not be what you're looking for. It's a little bit of a trade-off in whether you want to go as cheap as possible, so you're hitting the people when the most frequency of time, which we have found to be more effective. Or you can go more expensive, but now you're hitting them with something a little more custom. There's mailers out there that'll have like handwritten addresses on them and an actual stamp on it, not the bulk mail type stuff. It can cost you, considerably more to do those types of things. So if you're saying, hey, I'm going super niche, I mean, maybe you have a little bit bigger budget, but you have, let's say 10% of your mail you're going to do that month is this very niche thing. Maybe those you step up to a hand addressed envelope with a stamp. And then the 90% you're mailing, you do the 35 cent, 40 cent postcards that look like everybody else's. That way you're getting both the bulk as well as the targeted as well. But you can stand out. You just got to make sure you stand out for the right thing. And I'll add one more thing on there. I mail to light industrial properties or industrial properties in my area, but it's a very small list. Well, at least small from my standards. It's a couple thousand in South Central and Southeastern Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. I have it's hand addressed, stamp on it, handwritten letter. They use an actual pen to do it. And then we get them mailed to my house, and I put my business card in them. So my business card costs 40 cents, even in bulk. So it's a very expensive mailing to do this, but the call rate is phenomenal. I literally have a lot of people that call me and just say, hey, thank you for your letter. I got your letter. We're actually not selling at this time, but appreciate your interest. So it's to that point where people think you're actually just writing them, which is exactly what I want. I want that personal touch. But for houses, I wouldn't go that far. I think for most of them, I would say cheaper and hit them more frequently would be the side that I would err on for somebody starting out.
Sure. So, like I said, it looks like you and I could probably chat more and more. And I'd if you're open to it, I'd like to have you back on just to talk about the light industrial and how you run those numbers. And I'm sure there's a lot of detail that we could really go down regarding that type of an investment. But if you're looking for more information from Darren, head over to sellmyhouse2smith.com. And before we wrap up, my last question is there a question you wished I would have asked you today?
I'm drawing a blank. You caught me on that one. So I think we had a great conversation. Thank you for your time, JD.
I really appreciate your time. And this has been a great conversation. And I hope we can chat about that light industrial investing sometime.
Would love to.